The sleek silver ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars, their hulls gleaming against the pale morning sky. Commander Zara Vex stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, her tall frame encased in midnight blue armor that highlighted her purple skin and silver markings. Her amber eyes swept across the primitive planet below with barely concealed disgust. "This is what the Galactic Council considers a potential threat?" she asked, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 17 worlds. Around her, the bridge crew of Zarathi warrior women nodded in agreement, their own expressions showing similar disdain. Lieutenant Kira stepped forward, her crimson hair braided with combat honors. "The intelligence reports suggest their military technology is centuries behind our most basic weapons, Commander. Their largest explosive devices are barely more powerful than our training grenades." Zara laughed, a sound like crystal chimes in a storm. "And yet the Council trembles at the mention of humanity. They speak of these creatures as if they possess some mystical power." She gestured toward the blue and green world rotating slowly beneath them. "Look at them. They still use chemical propulsion to escape their own gravity well. They fight with metal projectiles instead of energy weapons. They cannot even unite their own species under a single banner." The Zarathi were a proud warrior race, standing 7 feet tall on average, with strength that could crush steel and reflexes that made them nearly unbeatable in combat. Their society had been built on conquest and honor, and they had never encountered a species that could match them in single combat. The idea that these small, weak-looking humans could pose any threat seemed laughable. "Shall we begin the standard conquest protocol?" asked Major Liss, her scarred face eager for battle. "Destroy their military installations, capture their leaders, and establish dominion?" Zara was about to give the order when her communications officer interrupted. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It appears to be some sort of official response to our arrival." "Put it through," Zara commanded, curious to hear what these inferior beings might have to say. The main screen flickered to life, showing a middle-aged human man in a simple blue suit. He stood in what appeared to be an official chamber, with other humans visible in the background. Despite the massive alien ships hovering over his world, his expression was calm, almost friendly. "Greetings to our visitors from the stars," the man said, his voice steady and warm. "I am Secretary General Morrison of the United Nations. We welcome you to Earth and hope that we might establish peaceful communication between our peoples." The bridge erupted in laughter. The idea that these tiny creatures would attempt to negotiate with the mighty Zarathi fleet was beyond amusing. Zara raised her hand for silence. "Human," she spoke into the communication array, her voice carrying across space to the planet below. "I am Commander Zara Vex of the Zarathi Empire. You will surrender your world immediately, or we will take it by force. Your primitive weapons cannot harm us, and your fragile bodies will break like twigs beneath our strength." Secretary General Morrison nodded thoughtfully, as if he had expected this response. "I understand your confidence, Commander. Your ships are certainly impressive, and I'm sure your people are formidable warriors. However, before any decisions are made, might I suggest a more personal approach to determining the outcome?" "What do you mean?" Zara asked, intrigued despite herself. "A challenge," Morrison replied. "Select your finest warrior, and we will select ours. Single combat to determine the fate of our world. If your champion wins, we will discuss terms of surrender. If ours wins, you agree to peaceful negotiations." The bridge fell silent. The audacity of these humans was staggering. A single human challenging a Zarathi warrior? It was like an insect challenging a giant. Zara's lips curved into a predatory smile. This would be entertaining at least. "Very well, human. We accept your challenge. But know that no Zarathi warrior has ever been defeated in single combat. Your champion will be broken, and your people will witness the futility of resistance." "We understand the risks," Morrison said calmly. "The challenge will take place in Central Park, New York City, in 6 hours. The area will be cleared of civilians, and representatives from both sides may observe." As the transmission ended, Zara turned to her officers. "Who among us desires the honor of crushing this human insect?" Every warrior on the bridge stepped forward, eager for the glory. But it was Major Thane who spoke first, standing 8 feet tall even for a Zarathi, with muscles like corded steel and scars from 100 battles. She was perhaps the strongest warrior in the fleet. "Commander, grant me this honor," Thane rumbled, her voice like distant thunder. "I will make this combat swift and decisive. The humans will understand their place in the galaxy." Zara nodded approvingly. Thane had never lost a battle, never shown mercy to an enemy, and never backed down from any challenge. If any warrior could demonstrate Zarathi superiority, it was her. "Very well, Major. You will represent the Empire in this farce. Try not to kill the human too quickly. Let them suffer enough to understand their mistake." 6 hours later, the ships descended to hover over Central Park. The area had been evacuated as promised, but news crews and military observers surrounded the perimeter. The entire world was watching as the fate of humanity hung in the balance. Thane materialized in a column of blue light, her massive form casting a long shadow across the grass. She wore traditional combat armor, black and silver, with a ceremonial blade at her side. Her purple skin gleamed in the afternoon sun, and her yellow eyes scanned the area for her opponent. For several minutes, nothing happened. Thane began to wonder if the humans had lost their nerve and fled. Then she heard footsteps approaching from the tree line. A single human male emerged from the shadows, walking casually across the open field. Thane's first thought was that there had been some mistake. This couldn't possibly be their champion. The human was of average height for his species, perhaps 6 feet tall, with brown hair and calm blue eyes. He wore simple black clothing and carried no visible weapons. Where Thane was a mountain of muscle and armor, he looked like an ordinary citizen. "You are the human champion?" Thane called out, her voice carrying easily across the distance between them. "I am," the man replied, his voice quiet but clear. "My name is David Chen. I'm honored to meet such a renowned warrior." Thane laughed, a booming sound that echoed off the surrounding buildings. "Human, I have conquered worlds. I have slain beasts that could swallow your cities whole. I have led charges against armies that numbered in the millions. You are not even armed." David smiled, an expression that somehow made Thane feel uneasy. "I don't need weapons, Major Thane. At least not the kind you're thinking of." "How do you know my rank and name?" Thane demanded, suddenly suspicious. "We've been listening to your communications since you arrived," David explained, beginning to circle slowly around the massive alien warrior. "We know a great deal about your people, your empire, and your methods of conquest. We've had 6 hours to prepare for this moment." For the first time since landing, Thane felt a flicker of uncertainty. The human moved with a fluid grace that spoke of training and experience. His eyes never left hers, and his breathing remained steady and controlled. This was not the behavior of a frightened primitive. "It matters not," Thane declared, drawing her ceremonial blade. The weapon hummed with energy, its edge capable of cutting through starship hulls. "Your preparations are meaningless against Zarathi's strength." David nodded, still smiling that unsettling smile. "You're absolutely right about Zarathi's strength, Major. Your people are physically superior to humans in every measurable way. Stronger, faster, more durable. In a contest of pure physical power, no human could hope to match a Zarathi warrior." Thane raised her weapon, ready to end this quickly. "Then you admit defeat?" "Not at all." David said, his voice carrying a new edge. You see, Major, you've made a fundamental error in your assessment of humanity. You've assumed that strength alone determines the outcome of a battle. But humans learned long ago that intelligence, adaptability, and will can overcome raw power. Before Thane could respond, David moved. Not toward her, but away, sprinting toward a cluster of trees at the edge of the clearing. Thane roared in fury and gave chase, her longer legs eating up the distance between them. But as she reached the trees, David seemed to vanish. Thane spun around, her enhanced senses searching for any trace of her opponent. The forest was dense here, with thick underbrush and dappled shadows that could hide a human-sized figure. "Face me, coward!" Thane bellowed, slashing at the vegetation with her energy blade. "I'm right here," came David's voice, seemingly from all directions at once. "But you see, Major, this is what humans do. We adapt. We use our environment. We turn disadvantages into advantages." A branch snapped behind Thane, and she spun around, blade ready. Nothing. Another sound from her left, then her right. The human was moving through the underbrush like a ghost, using the terrain to his advantage. Thane realized with growing frustration that despite her superior physical abilities, she was fighting on the human's terms now. The dense forest negated many of her advantages, while David seemed perfectly at home in this environment. "This is not honorable combat!" Thane snarled, hacking away more branches in her fury. "No!" David's voice came from above now, and Thane looked up to see him perched impossibly high in the canopy. "This is human combat. We fight to win, Major, not to look impressive doing it." As Thane processed this, David dropped from the tree, landing silently on her shoulders. Before she could react, he had wrapped something around her neck and rolled away into the undergrowth. Thane reached up to find a thin cable wrapped around her throat. Not tight enough to strangle her, but snug enough to make its presence known. At the other end of the cable, she could see a small device blinking red. "What is this?" she demanded. David's voice came from somewhere in the shadows. "That's a monitoring device, Major. It's reading your biosigns, your heart rate, your stress levels, your exact position. Every move you make is being tracked and analyzed by computers that process information faster than you can think." Thane grabbed the cable and yanked, but the material was stronger than it appeared. She tried cutting it with her blade, but the energy weapon seemed to have no effect on it. "The cable is made from carbon nanotubes," David explained, his voice calm and educational. "Stronger than any metal your people have encountered. The device itself is hardened against energy weapons. Very useful for situations exactly like this." For the first time in her life, Major Thane felt something she had never experienced before. She felt outmatched, not overpowered, but outthought, outmaneuvered, and completely at her opponent's mercy. David emerged from the shadows, moving with the same calm confidence he had shown throughout their encounter. The cable in his hand led directly to the device around Thane's neck, but she noticed he held it loosely, without any apparent concern that she might attack him. "You're wondering why you can't simply rush me and end this fight," David said, reading her expression perfectly. "The device around your neck isn't just a tracker, Major. It's also analyzing your nervous system, your muscle tension, your preparation for movement. If you make any sudden aggressive motion toward me, it will deliver a precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulse directly to your brainstem." Thane's eyes widened. Such technology was beyond anything in the Zarathi arsenal. "That's impossible. No species has achieved that level of bioneural interface." "You're right," David agreed, settling into a comfortable position on a fallen log. "No single species has achieved it. But humanity has something your empire lacks, Major. We cooperate. We share knowledge freely. We build upon each other's discoveries instead of hoarding them for conquest." From her position in orbit, Commander Zara watched the confrontation with growing unease. Her confidence in Thane's abilities was absolute, but something about this encounter was troubling her. The human seemed too relaxed, too prepared for this situation. "Open a communication channel to Major Thane," she ordered. "Channel open, Commander." "Major, what is your status?" Thane's voice came through clearly, though tinged with frustration. "The human has employed unknown technology, Commander. I am temporarily constrained." Zara felt a chill run down her spine. In all her years of service, she had never heard Thane admit to being constrained by anyone or anything. Back in the park, David was continuing his explanation. "You see, Major, when your ships appeared in our system, you sent out scanning beams to analyze our technology and defenses. What you didn't realize is that we were scanning you right back. Our computers have been analyzing your ship configurations, your energy signatures, your communication protocols. We've learned quite a bit about Zarathi technology in the past few hours." "Impossible," Thane growled. "Our systems are shielded against primitive scanning attempts." David smiled that unsettling smile again. "Major, you're thinking in terms of active scanning. Radar, LiDAR, energy pulse analysis. But humans have developed something far more sophisticated: passive observation and pattern analysis. We watched how your ships moved, how they responded to our atmosphere, how their hulls reflected different wavelengths of light. We analyzed the gravitational effects of your mass distribution, the electromagnetic signatures of your engines, even the chemical composition of your exhaust." He stood up and began pacing, his movements casual despite the deadly situation. "Within 2 hours of your arrival, our computers had built detailed models of your technology base, your power systems, even your probable tactical doctrines. That's what humans do, Major. We observe, we analyze, we understand, and then we adapt." Thane struggled against the device around her neck, but every time she prepared to make an aggressive move, she felt a warning tingle that suggested the human wasn't bluffing about the electromagnetic pulse. "You speak of cooperation and sharing," Thane said, her voice heavy with disdain. "Yet you fight from shadows like a coward. Where is the honor in such tactics?" David stopped pacing and looked directly at her, his expression becoming serious for the first time. "Major, let me tell you a story about human honor. 3,000 years ago, there was a city called Troy. A great army besieged it for 10 years, but could not break its walls through direct assault. Finally, they built a great wooden horse and pretended to sail away, leaving it as a supposed offering to the gods. The Trojans, thinking they had won, brought the horse inside their walls. That night, soldiers hidden inside the horse opened the gates for their army." Thane snorted. "Deception and trickery. You prove my point about human cowardice." "Do I?" David asked. "Those soldiers who hid inside the horse knew they were vastly outnumbered. If discovered, they would die horribly. Yet they volunteered for the mission because it would save their city and their people. They chose almost certain death to protect what they loved. Is that cowardice, Major?" For a moment, Thane was silent, considering this perspective she had never encountered before. David continued. "Human honor isn't about following arbitrary rules of combat, Major. It's about protecting those who cannot protect themselves, about sacrificing for something greater than yourself, about never giving up even when defeat seems certain. Every human watching this confrontation knows that you are physically superior to me in every way. But they also know that I will do whatever it takes to protect my world, just as you would do whatever it takes to protect yours." Up on the ship, Commander Zara was having her own moment of revelation. The longer this encounter continued, the more she was beginning to understand that the Zarathi had seriously underestimated these humans. Their technology might be primitive in some ways, but their thinking was incredibly sophisticated. "Lieutenant Kira," she called. Run a detailed analysis of all human communication since our arrival. I want to know exactly what they've been planning." As Kira worked at her console, her expression grew increasingly troubled. "Commander, they've been broadcasting constantly since we arrived, but not to us. They've been coordinating response strategies across their entire planet. Military installations, research facilities, even civilian populations have been contributing data and suggestions." Suggestions for what? Tactical analysis of our ships, theoretical countermeasures, strategic planning for various scenarios. Commander, it's as if their entire species is working together to solve the problem of our presence. Zara stared at the data streaming across her screen. In Zarathi society, military planning was the exclusive domain of the warrior caste. The idea that civilians, scientists, even children might contribute to tactical decisions was completely alien to them. Back on the ground, David was demonstrating yet another aspect of human adaptability. "Major, you mentioned that no Zarathi warrior has ever been defeated in single combat. That's an impressive record, and I believe it's true. But you've only fought other warriors who think like warriors. You've never faced an opponent who thinks like a human." "And how does a human think?" Thane asked, genuinely curious now. "We think like survivors," David replied. "Every human alive today is descended from ancestors who survived ice ages, plagues, predators, natural disasters, and countless wars. We evolved not to be the strongest or the fastest, but to be the most adaptable. When we encounter a problem we can't solve with strength, we solve it with intelligence. When we can't solve it with intelligence, we solve it with cooperation. When we can't solve it with cooperation, we solve it with determination." He gestured toward the sky, where the Zarathi ships hung like dark clouds. "Your people look at our world and see primitive technology and weak bodies. But those ships up there? They're not just facing one opponent or even one army. They're facing an entire species that has just been presented with its greatest challenge ever. And humans, Major, have never failed to rise to a challenge." As if to illustrate his point, David pulled out a small communication device. "Command, this is Eagle 1. Package is secure. Initiate Phase 2. "Acknowledged, Eagle 1. Phase 2 is live." Suddenly, the air around Central Park began to shimmer. Thane looked up to see what appeared to be more human aircraft materializing around the Zarathi ships. But these weren't the primitive vessels the aliens had observed earlier. These were sleek, advanced craft that seemed to bend light around them. "Stealth technology," David explained, following her gaze. "We've had it for decades, but we kept it hidden, along with quite a few other capabilities. You see, Major, when humanity first detected faster-than-light travel signatures in our system, we didn't panic. We prepared. We've been planning for first contact with potentially hostile aliens for over a century." Thane's communication device crackled to life. "Major, we are detecting previously unknown aircraft surrounding our position. Their technology appears far more advanced than anything we observed during our initial scans." David nodded approvingly. "The ships you scanned when you arrived were our decoys, Major. Museum pieces and deliberately primitive craft designed to make you overconfident. Our real military assets have been hidden until now. We wanted to see what kind of opponents we were dealing with before we revealed our true capabilities." The revelation hit Thane like a physical blow. The humans hadn't been caught off guard by the Zarathi arrival. They had been ready, prepared, and had deliberately manipulated the situation to their advantage. "This entire challenge," Thane said slowly, "it was all a deception, a way to keep us talking while you prepared your real defenses." "Partly," David admitted, "but not entirely. You see, Major, everything I've told you about human nature, about our adaptability and cooperation, that's all true. The real purpose of this encounter wasn't to defeat you. It was to show you who we really are." He stood and extended his hand toward her. "The device around your neck? It's been recording everything we've discussed. Every word, every gesture, every biometric reading. It's been broadcasting to your ship and to our people simultaneously. Both our species have been witnessing this conversation. Thane stared at the offered hand in confusion. I don't understand. Major, you came here expecting to conquer a world of primitives. Instead, you've discovered a species that thinks differently than anyone you've encountered before. The question now is, what are you going to do with that knowledge? David's hand remained extended, and slowly, almost involuntarily, Thane found herself reaching out to take it. The moment their hands touched, the device around her neck emitted a soft chime and fell away. You're releasing me? Thane asked in amazement. The challenge is over, Major. You came here to prove Zarathi superiority through combat. I came here to prove human adaptability through demonstration. I think we've both succeeded. As David helped the massive alien warrior to her feet, Thane realized that everything she thought she knew about strength, honor, and combat had just been turned upside down. This human hadn't defeated her through superior force. He had defeated her through superior understanding. Commander Zara materialized in Central Park moments later, her personal guard forming a protective circle around her. Her amber eyes took in the scene. Major Thane standing unharmed but clearly shaken, the human champion David Chen waiting calmly nearby, and the subtle tension that suggested everything had changed. Report, Major, Zara commanded, though her voice lacked its earlier confidence. Thane struggled to find words that could adequately describe what had just transpired. Commander, I was not defeated in combat, but I was educated. These humans are not what we believed them to be. Secretary General Morrison approached with a small delegation of human representatives. Despite being surrounded by towering alien warriors who could crush him with their bare hands, he maintained the same calm demeanor he had shown during their first communication. Commander Zara, Morrison said with a respectful nod. I hope our demonstration has been enlightening. We believe it's time for a more comprehensive discussion about the relationship between our peoples. Zara studied the human leader carefully. During their brief exchange hours earlier, she had dismissed him as a typical primitive politician attempting to negotiate from a position of weakness. Now she was beginning to suspect there was far more to this creature than met the eye. Your champion claims victory through deception and trickery, Zara said, testing the waters. Is this how humans conduct all their affairs? Morrison smiled, and Zara was surprised to find the expression genuinely warm rather than mocking. Commander, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about what just occurred here. David didn't defeat Major Thane. He opened a dialogue with her. Everything that happened was designed to demonstrate that combat between our species is unnecessary and ultimately destructive for both sides. David stepped forward, and Zara noticed that Major Thane moved slightly to place herself between the human and any potential threat from the Zarathi guards. The gesture was subtle but significant. Thane was unconsciously protecting the human who had just bested her. Commander, David said, may I show you something that might help explain our perspective? Without waiting for permission, David activated a holographic display that materialized in the air between them. The image showed Earth from orbit, but not as the Zarathi had seen it. This view highlighted the planet's defensive systems, hidden installations, and the true extent of human technology. When your ships arrived, David explained, our computers calculated that you had sufficient firepower to devastate our surface cities within hours. In a conventional war, humanity would lose badly. But humans rarely fight conventional wars. The display shifted to show tactical scenarios, each one illustrating how human forces would respond to invasion. Guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics, technological sabotage, biological warfare, and strategies that the Zarathi had never encountered in their centuries of conquest. We could make our world uninhabitable for you, David continued matter-of-factly. poison the atmosphere, contaminate the water supplies, release pathogens specifically designed to target Zarathi physiology. We could ensure that even if you conquered Earth, you would gain nothing but a dead rock floating in space. Zara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Earth's atmosphere. You would destroy your own world rather than surrender? If necessary, Morrison answered without hesitation. But that's exactly the kind of thinking we're hoping to move beyond. Commander, your people have built an empire based on conquest and domination. But has it brought you peace? Has it brought you happiness? Has it solved the fundamental problems that every intelligent species faces? Lieutenant Kira, who had been monitoring communications from the ship, stepped forward and whispered urgently in Zara's ear. The commander's expression grew increasingly troubled as she listened. "What is it?" Major Thane asked, noting her commander's distress. Zara looked up at the humans with new respect and considerable concern. "Our intelligence networks across the galaxy are reporting unusual activity. Several of our subject worlds are showing signs of unrest, rebellion. They appear to be coordinating their activities in ways we've never seen before." David and Morrison exchanged glances, and Zara immediately understood the implication. "You've been in contact with other species," Zara stated. "You've been spreading your methods. The moment we detected your approach, we sent out quantum entanglement communications to every intelligent species we could reach," Morrison confirmed. "We shared our tactical analyses, our observations about Zarathi weaknesses, and our strategies for resistance. Commander, your empire is facing coordinated rebellion on 17 different worlds simultaneously." The revelation hit the Zarathi delegation like a thunderbolt. In all their centuries of conquest, they had never faced organized resistance from multiple worlds at once. Their strategy had always depended on dealing with isolated planets that couldn't coordinate their defenses. "This is an act of war," Zara said, but her voice lacked conviction. "No," David replied gently. "This is an act of liberation. Every species has the right to self-determination, Commander. Your empire has been built on denying that right to others." Major Thane, who had been silent during this exchange, finally spoke up. "Commander, during our encounter, this human showed me recordings of Zarathi conquest campaigns, but he also showed me something else. He showed me what we could become if we chose cooperation over domination." The holographic display changed again, now showing potential futures where Zarathi and human technology was combined for peaceful purposes. Faster-than-light travel merged with human adaptability to explore the galaxy. Zarathi strength combined with human creativity to build wonders beyond imagination. Military might redirected toward protecting innocent species rather than conquering them. "Your people are magnificent warriors," Morrison said, addressing Zara directly. "But imagine what you could accomplish if that strength was used to protect the weak instead of dominating them. Imagine if your tactical brilliance was applied to solving problems instead of creating them." Zara stared at the holographic displays, seeing possibilities she had never considered. For the first time in her life, she was confronted with an alternative to the path her people had always followed. "You're asking us to abandon everything we are," she said quietly. "Not abandon," David corrected. "Evolve. Commander, every species reaches this crossroads eventually. You can continue down the path of conquest until you've destroyed everything worth conquering, or you can choose to grow beyond your origins and become something greater." Lieutenant Kira spoke up hesitantly. "Commander, there's something else. The rebellions aren't just military. The subject species are offering technological exchanges with each other. They're creating an alliance based on mutual cooperation. If we don't adapt, we'll be left behind," Zara finished. The implications were staggering. The Zarathi Empire could find itself isolated in a galaxy where every other species was working together. Morrison stepped closer, his expression earnest. Commander, we're not your enemies. We could be your greatest allies. Imagine what humanity and the Zerathi could accomplish together. Your strength and our adaptability, your honor and our innovation, your experience and our fresh perspectives. And if we refuse? Zara asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Then you'll face every species in the galaxy united against you, David replied without hostility. Not out of hatred, but out of necessity. The age of conquest is ending, Commander. The age of cooperation is beginning. You can be part of that future, or you can fight against it. But you cannot stop it. Silence stretched between the two groups as Zara wrestled with the most important decision in Zerathi history. Around her, she could see her own officers beginning to understand the magnitude of what they were facing. Major Thane stepped forward and placed her hand on Zara's shoulder. Commander, I have fought beside you for 20 years. I have seen you lead our people to countless victories. But this human showed me something today that no enemy has ever shown me before. He showed me mercy. He showed me that true strength sometimes means choosing not to fight. Zara looked at her most trusted warrior, seeing a change in her that went beyond the physical. Thane had encountered something that had fundamentally altered her understanding of what it meant to be strong. If we agree to these negotiations, Zara said slowly, what guarantees do we have? How do we know this isn't just another elaborate deception? Morrison smiled and gestured toward David. Commander, for the past 6 hours, this man has had the ability to kill Major Thane at any moment. He chose not to. He had the opportunity to humiliate her and broadcast that humiliation across the galaxy. He chose not to. He could have used his technological advantages to capture her and hold her hostage. He chose not to. Those choices define who we are, just as your choices will define who you are. David nodded and added, Commander, I'm going to tell you something that might surprise you. Humanity has been waiting for this encounter for over a century, not because we wanted to fight you, but because we hoped to meet you. Your people represent qualities that we admire: courage, strength, dedication to honor. We believe that together we could explore the galaxy not as conquerors, but as protectors, not as enemies of other species, but as their guardians. Zara felt something she hadn't experienced in decades: hope, not for conquest or glory, but for something entirely new. A future where her people's strength served a greater purpose than simply adding new worlds to their empire. Very well, she said finally, her voice carrying across the park and up to the ships hovering overhead. The Zerathi Empire agrees to negotiations, but understand this, humans, if this proves to be another deception, if you betray our trust, then you will face our wrath as no species ever has. Morrison extended his hand, just as David had done with Thane. Commander, you have my word as a representative of humanity. We will not betray your trust, and in return, I believe you'll find that the friendship of humanity is worth far more than the conquest of our world. As Zara reached out to clasp the human's much smaller hand, she realized that this simple gesture was changing the course of galactic history. The age of Zerathi conquest was ending, but perhaps something even greater was beginning. The two fleets, human and Zerathi, hung in orbit above Earth as representatives from both species began the delicate work of transforming enemies into allies. And across the galaxy, other species watched and waited to see if this new alliance would bring the peace they had dreamed of for so long. In the end, the encounter between the Zerathi warrior women and humanity had become something neither side had expected. The beginning of a new chapter in galactic civilization, written not in the language of conquest, but in the vocabulary of hope.